Okay, so now we are getting ready to introduce our speaker spark for today. And I'm looking forward to introducing the speaker who has spoken at Circle Miracles before with a lot of insightful information. Her name is Barbara Caruso. The title of her talk is Broken Heart Syndrome today. And it is a new approach to a different way of looking at a medical and a spiritual perspective of heart issues. She will explain what the broken heart syndrome is and what causes it from a medical perspective and a spiritual perspective. Barbara has been an RN nurse for 45 years, dealing with death and dying in many forms. She loved teaching as an assistant professor at Drexel Medical School and became an AIDS educator during the AIDS crisis. However, when her mediumship opened up at 65, her life was changed in a spiritual way she had never anticipated. And spirituality and mediumship has been in her world for 10 years now, studying under many mentors. Her relationship with her fur babies and family alike has been impacted. And while still working as an RN, Barbara spends her non-work time in teaching mediumship and connecting to the other side. So I am really looking forward to hearing her stories and her experiences working with this broken heart syndrome and how it affects us. Okay, so please give Barbara a warm circle of your husband. Great.
Thank you, Annette. Okay, well, I'm really glad to be back, especially since I almost died 6 weeks ago from this broken heart syndrome. And if Ken hadn't reached out to me to say, sorry, your cat died, I didn't, and then I ended up telling him the rest of the story. He said, hey, could you come talk about this spiritual experience you had? So I had a near-death experience 35 years ago, many years ago. I never expected to have another near-death experience, but this was not in the usual way that most people experience it. So let me I know you know about the mediumship and stuff. So for those who have fur babies, we've had multiple fur babies come and go in our lives. But this one cat that I've had 20 years, when I first got him, he was very sick and I was told he might not make it. And fortunately, I knew someone who did Reiki on pets, and that person came to my house and she saved his life. And again, 20 years ago, doing Reiki on pets was not that well known. So I have to say, I was really lucky. This particular cat, who this near-death experience is about for me, had been stolen once by a neighbor for 65 days and had gotten lost twice. And he had been in a coma. So I had used an animal communicator, which really helped me understand this cat had a spiritual journey alongside of me. And this is the first time I truly had an animal that I felt that spiritual bond with. So Sparkle was a Bengal, and he just, he was very kind of charismatic. A lot of people liked him. But what happened was, and this is where it gets strange, is that he aged. And of course, I knew he was going to pass. But 6 weeks ago, he had lost weight. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to let him suffer. And I called an animal communicator who I've used for 25 years. And he said, would you please help me pass? He didn't want to wait another week or two. At that moment, my grief, having to let him go, was so intense, I had a heart attack. And it was the intensity of the responsibility of having to help him cross over, which euthanasia, is kind to pets. But I had, and the other side of the story, before I go any further, is I had seen a cardiologist 3 months ago just for regular checkup. Every test was normal, my echo, my cardiogram. They even did a study of my coronary arteries. I didn't have one plaque in any of my arteries because I've been an athlete all my life. So I had just gotten cleared 3 months ago with a healthy, so all of a sudden I'm looking at this cat and he said, you have to help me cross. I broke out in a cold sweat. I had chest pain. I was short of breath and I almost passed out. And I kept saying to myself on this side, well, wait a second, you just had a checkup, you're fine. This isn't a real heart attack. This isn't real. You're just emotional. You're just upset. It only lasted a minute and it dissipated. The cat looked at me, and the next day, of course, I had to have someone come to the house and have him cross, and I was still having some discomfort and everything. Again, most nurses go into denial, like everybody else goes into denial. And I kept thinking it was stress. I was just stressed out. So my cardiologist calls me and says something about one of my other tests. And he said, could you come back in? I need to check something. Well, here, when he checked, it turned out, and I have to tell you this, I carry this EKG everywhere I go, because this shows that I had the heart attack, but the heart had already healed. So this is called broken heart syndrome. And what happens is that there's people who have been going through this for centuries that cardiologists and doctors and healthcare providers never recognize, because you know how one partner will die and then a week later their spouse will die and everybody, oh, she died from grief. It is true. So what happens to the heart, even when you don't have any blocks, is that the heart gets so stressed, it squeezes and it shuts off the blood supply. You have all the symptoms of a heart attack. You have the symptoms on an EKG of a heart attack. Now, you can die from this if it's so severe. It's pretty rare, but most people ignore it like I did, and then they end up in trouble. I was very lucky that my doctor happened to call me back in for another test. Something called troponin, which is a chemical that the heart releases when it's had a heart attack. Mine was very high, so it was proof I had had the heart attack. I was very tired for a week or two, but that was about it. I had to start a new job, which was a little bit more stressful, but the cat in his passing taught me one more lesson, that I had to now pay attention to my own body and not go into this denial place. But fortunately, there's one doctor who has listened, Dr. Takasaboto from Japan, started to see multiple people come to him that had this like grief syndrome. And nobody was acknowledging that this was a true, they kept saying, okay, they're in grief, that's not real. And nobody would acknowledge it. So he did a whole study on it. And he did find out that people are having these heart attacks, but they're not like the traditional heart attack, because your heart can still heal. After usually a heart attack, you have a blockage, you have some damage in there. With this, it's called cardiomyopathy or broken heart syndrome. Your heart can heal, and it probably takes about 2 months. And I just felt, from a spiritual perspective, I sat there and looked at this cat, and it was a direct line. He said, you have to stay, I'm going to go. And I really feel that the cat kind of helps me get through that. And, you know, there's lots of research on animals and how much they can help us spiritually and teach us. And I really wanted to at least talk to you a little bit about that. And this whole syndrome, you know, the Reiki, the fact that helped the cat, and I had Reiki done afterwards, gave me a whole other second lease on life. And being a medium, I was like, I don't mind going to the other side. I mean, I'm not scared or anything, but I kept saying, but my grandkids still need me. I can't go yet. Sorry. And I'm negotiating with the other side with my ancestors and my parents. I'm going, I'm not ready. I'm sorry. The grandkids still need me. So it was truly kind of another spiritual awakening where I never expected to be talking to the other side and asking them, please let me stay, because it's not my time. And fortunately, I think the cat took charge and really kind of blessed me. So the reason I wanted to share this was, number one, there is a true broken heart syndrome that has been denied for centuries that people go through. And number three, it can be really a condition that needs to be checked out. I don't mean to take it lightly. And that someone needs to get, make sure they get medical attention. Unfortunately, we think when we're going through grief, that it's normal to kind of maybe have some chest pain or indigestion or shortness of breath. And yes, on some level. But now that this wonderful doctor decided to listen to people and really see that it was truly the heart got squeezed and got stressed and showed all the symptoms of a heart attack, it really enlightened a lot of medical professionals to pay attention. So that's really kind of the long and short of it. But I wanted to really encourage you, if a relative or someone does pass and someone else is in such a grief-stricken state, that there can be a true medical heart reaction to that. And, please make sure they get that attention. Again, Ken, thank you. On my posting for my cat, I had strangers. I had over 500 replies to my cat posting. People were just like so wonderful about my cat having passed. And, I couldn't put all this in the post, but I would hope that coming here, some of you would kind of keep this information. And if anybody in your family or friend experiences this, acknowledge it. Because when I went back to the doctor, he said to me, well, what happened that you had this chest pain? Do you think I told him it was over my cat? No. I said I had a death in the family because I was afraid he wouldn't listen. I was afraid he wouldn't acknowledge it or pay attention. And I've been in the medical profession all these years. I know how they think. So if I said it was over a cat, I think he would have sent me to a psychiatrist. But, there is this true medical condition called Takasumoto's cardiomyopathy or broken heart syndrome. So please, if you have someone that's grieving and they're experiencing these symptoms, please get the medical attention. I'm really blessed that I'm back here. I'm still alive. I'm on another spiritual journey, but I just wanted to make sure that I got the chance to say this. Thank you for having me today.